The Carolina Panthers, the Buffalo Bills, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are teams that should consider double dipping at the wide receiver position in the 2024 NFL Draft. We're going to tell you why and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout and a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being out every day. And you know, I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man. And what the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your number one draft podcast for everything draft content. DP, today we are talking about NFL teams that should double dip at the wide receiver position, meaning that they should draft two or more wide receivers, right? We're talking about the Green Bay Packers from last year, right? Where they went and got Dattavian Wicks, they went and got Jaden Reed, right? Those teams that just simply need to add at the wide receiver position. Then we're going to talk about our stock up players, right? Guys who are consistently rising up the draft board, and I think they will find themselves as early day two, potentially round one guys. We'll talk about that, and then guys that we believe are falling down the draft boards, whether that's, you know, off the field issues, right, that are starting to pop up, or when we watch the film, we're starting to see certain things in the details of their game that they may end up going lower than what the consensus may think. But DP, before we get this started, man, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Keith, I listed off the teams: the Carolina Panthers, Buffalo Bills, Los Angeles Chargers, Jacksonville Jaguars. And what I did, Keith, is I went and found two receivers, because I believe all four teams should consider with the way that their wide receiver rooms are constructed currently for all four of these teams. I went and found two prospects. I tried to be different in terms of like what prospects I put where, so I didn't double list the same guy twice for two different teams. But Keith, I want to start with the Carolina Panthers. When you think about the Panthers, what are two prospects? And I'm talking about, we talk about it, right? Whether it's, they don't have a first round pick. So for them, top of the second, right? Back into the first for them. Like that first pick in the second round till you think about maybe third, fourth round, what's some prospects you think that would be good fits to help round out their receiving room?
Yeah, so you look at it, they traded for Deontay Johnson. So they had the smaller, shiftier guy, right? So I thought about Xavier Worthy, but obviously I think they would want some type of balance. I think of a well-rounded wide receiver that should be available at the top of the second round. You look at a guy like a Ricky Pearsall, big body frame, right? 6'1", close to 200 pounds, 40-inch vertical, plus ran a 4.4 40. So a guy that maybe he won't be your high-level X, but he can be the Z. And then I think if Xavier Legette is there, Xavier Legette or Keon Coleman, you let the rest of the NFL mess this up. And if you can get a first-round prospect in this top of the second round, then you just say, okay, I'm all for it, right? But I also think with the Carolina Panthers, in order for them to double dip at the wide receiver position, they may have to let go of another defensive asset, right, to be able to recoup another third round pick or something like that, so they can get back in. But the top of that second round, those are my three guys: Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, Ricky Pearsall, so they can balance out this wide receiver core. Then hopefully they're able to move Jonathan Mingo off the spot of being that, trying to make him that X wide receiver, right? Or that number two, or let him do very specific things, because that's what he did at Ole Miss. What he did was very specific in his usage. So I like those three wide receiver options for the Carolina Panthers.
So for me, Keith, you listed one of my guys, my guy X, man, Xavier Legette. I think top of the second round, that 33rd pick. I know Panthers fans, for some reason, they keep trying to say he's Jonathan Mingo. Guys, he is nothing like John. He may look like him in terms of like height, weight, like size, and they both ran four.
I'll say
That's it.
this, that I had, and just being completely honest, I had a 5th round grade on Jonathan
I had a
Mingo.
4th.
Yeah, and I'm struggling not to give Xavier Legette a 1st round grade, right? So I'm
Correct.
just, for the listeners, right, that I don't view them nowhere near the same prospect. When I watched them on film.
No, not at all, Keith. And I think looking at their picks, they have 2 seconds because that when they traded Brian Burns to the Giants, they got the 39th pick. They have their own third, and then they have a 4th. So they got four. They have what 4 picks in the top 101, right? So
Mhm.
all right, cool. So because they still need a center, they do need another edge rusher, Mike Corner. They got to go some a couple different places. But with the third pick, I say go ahead and get Xavier Legette. If he fall, like you said, if the NFL wants to mess this up, Keith, you benefit from that, right? Be the team that's smart enough to take such a high level guy. I think about pick 101. If he's there, I run the card up. Malik Washington out of Virginia, right? I
Hmm.
think when you think about Deontay Johnson, Jonathan Mingo, you still have Adam Thielen. Then you bring in Xavier Legette and you bring in Malik Washington. Now you tell Bryce, I'm giving you size, speed, route running, yards after catch. I'm giving you a variety of options and weapons that can do different things, that can line up in multiple spots, that can really complement one another, right? Where if if Adam Thielen needs to come off the board, Keith, I'm fine with that. That's cool because if he needs to come off the field, right? He's an older guy. If he needs a breather, I could slide Malik Washington in the slot, or I can knock down Deontay Johnson in the slot, put Xavier Legette at the X spot, right? You know what I mean? Different things. You can manipulate your alignment, and I think that's where I would go. Xavier Legette with that first pick, that 33rd pick, and then pick 101, that 4th round pick. Let me get Malik Washington.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of the wild card teams that made the wild card last year, divisional. Like I don't want to say it as simple as this, right? But some of the better teams, DP. Do you see the Pittsburgh Steelers as a team that could potentially double dip at the wide receiver position, or should the Dallas Cowboys think about double dipping? Right. I want to talk about some of the teams that's not towards the top of the draft, but kind of from pick 19, 20 on to 32. Are there some of these playoff teams that we're sitting here looking at that need to double dip? Well, one team that they have Houston's pick, right? The Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, they need a double. They might need a triple dip. They just need a copy paste what the Green Bay Packers did last year. Get 2 wide receivers, get 2 more tight ends. Just load the whole skill position up. But are there any playoff teams, DP, that you look at the what happened in the offseason and you're like, what, they may need to go grab 2 wide receivers?
I believe the Buffalo Bills absolutely need a double dip.
100%.
They got to. And the 2
I,
prospects I
and
thought
I
about.
think is DP. I don't mean to cut you off. I think it's weird because I think there's a segment of the Buffalo Bills fan base that want to tell themselves like, don't panic, right? Or like,
Don't panic,
it's
yeah.
okay, we'll figure it out. And it's like, I think this is why y'all got in this situation, right? Is constantly like kind of telling yourself everything is okay. And sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire, right? And I remember I put in my mock draft, I was like, the Stephon Diggs situation is not turning well. And people were commenting at me, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay. You know what I'm saying? And then now
Yeah.
we're at this position. I 100% agree with you on the Buffalo Bills. That should definitely be a team that double dips.
They have to, Keith, because losing Diggs, losing Gabe Davis, that's your top 2 guys, and Khalil Shakir's there. I know that Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox are there. You brought in Curtis Samuel, so I know that there's some solid pieces there. But 2 players that came to mind that maybe not the 1st round, maybe 2nd round if he's there, or maybe you trade back. If you can get Ladd McConkey early on in the first 2 rounds, and then get a Tez Walker, 4th round. Keith, that's a great situation for Josh Allen. Tez brings that speed, that explosiveness, that deep ball tracking. That's where he really thrives at. With Drake May, same thing. That deep ball. He thrives in the deeper portion of the field, where then Ladd McConkey steps in, and now you have 2 route runners on the field, 3 technically with Dalton Kincaid. And you have, Ladd McConkey, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid on the field at the same time. And like I said, Curtis Samuel. So it gives Josh Allen not only guys that can separate, who are good athletes, but also run at the catch options.
Yeah, I'm with that 100%, and we'll see how that goes, man. And the goal, obviously, you the Buffalo Bills, right? Is to win the Super Bowl. So you want to at least have the, give yourself the best opportunity with putting out the most talented roster that you could potentially put out. DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, man. Next up is the stock up segment, and I know what I'm going to talk about a Georgia Bulldog, DP. So coming up next, man, we're about to get into this stock up segment.
This couldn't exist without the help of sponsors like Yahoo Finance. Let's get straight to the point, guys. Do you want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage? Pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. They are the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. The stock market is back open, guys, here on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, and talk about players who, just when you get into the tape, Keith, that stood out to me. I got to go to Wake Forest and their safety, Malik Mustafa. And one of the main reasons for me, man, he's an old school safety, Keith, in terms of, man, I don't really care so much about protecting other people. I'm out here to hit. I'm out here to be a big boy hitter, a grown man, and he hits just like it. A young man that's physical, you know what I mean? And you're talking about coming downhill. I think he probably plays a lot more box safety in the league. You know how the NFL is when it comes down to guys like that. If they like to pigeonhole guys, like if you're a great hitter, you can't be good in coverage, right? You can't do both clearly. Same thing they do with offensive linemen. But with Malik Mustafa, man, I just look at him and I'm like, bro, let me get this young man. You think about the Seattle Seahawks not having safeties right now, or not having high-level starters and things of that nature. I look at him at 5'10", 210 pounds. He is the most physical safety in this class. You know what I mean? He literally comes downhill with a reckless abandon. He's going to be a form tackler. Now, he's not going to be somebody that just strikes. He forms tackles as well.
Okay, I was going to ask you, does he remind you any of, and this guy, I don't think he's entered the draft. He's been injured, but he's been on the scene for a while in the draft community. Jalen Catalon, do you get any Jalen Catalon from him? Like, is he that type of violent tackler?
Yeah, he's got some of that to him as well. Like, you know what I mean? Okay. But, and like I said, because of the fact that he does, to me, because he does wrap up, he doesn't just throw his shoulder and, you know what I mean, different things like that. Like how Catalan is like really, really aggressive and almost reckless at times, where
just all in.
He's just all in. It doesn't even matter, you know what I mean? But I think low hole safety type situations, I think Malik Mustafa is going to have some value for teams. A guy that absolutely does not mind playing the run. He could drop off as a spot dropper in coverage, kind of play some robber tech. He is, again, he's not the biggest guy. I think he's like in terms of height. So he's about 5'10", I think 5'10" even. 5'10" even, right? So you think about, okay, he's not going to play a lot on man-to-man on tight ends and different things like that. But as a zone defender, like, yeah, he's going to bring that because his hitting ability is going to strike some fear into to bring that back. Can we bring that back to football where receivers were a little bit afraid to run across the middle? Now these guys they're running straight through. It's like, oh man, this is just practice. This is 707. Now Malik Mustafa is one of them safeties that if you don't pay attention, he's gonna hit you in the strike zone, and it's gonna be up to the refs to be like, all right, are we gonna call a fluke? Are we gonna throw a fluky flag here just because he's not making this flag football and he's making it real grown man football again? Bring back real football, baby. Give me Malik Mustafa.
There we go. The campaign to bring back real football. DP, you talked about a safety. I have a safety also, man. I'm talking about safety nickel. Talking about Georgia defensive back Javon Bullard. Just finished him up, and I like this guy a lot. DP, I like him so much that I'm going to comp him to one of my favorite NFL safety nickel guys. That's just a ton of fun to watch, and that's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think they comp very well. I looked at the 40 times. I think Chauncey might have ran a 4.44, and I think Javon Bullard ran a 4.47. The 10-yard splits, I think, was like 0.03 tenths of a difference. One is 5'11. I think the other one is 5'11 and 3/4. Very comparable in size. I think Chauncey was probably, I think he's about 10 pounds heavier overall, but they check a lot of the same boxes, DP. And I just like those middle of the field players, especially now with how much we see the slot fades, right? We see the option routes. Your safeties have to cover. So this is a very fluid mover. And this is what I like too. He's extremely confident in one, his burst and his makeup speed, because this is a guy that on those option routes, he undercuts those routes, right? When the receiver breaks in and out, right, in cutting route, out cutting route, if he feels comfortable that he can get there, he'll undercut those routes. And what that lets me know is, one, he's confident in himself, but the potential for turnover, right? Like, this is a guy, if you're a little bit late, the quarterback is a little bit late throwing that football, he's going to jump under that thing and he's going to get the interception. And I just like his trigger. I like his instincts, very instinctual guy. I like him both in man and in zone as a football player. This is what I'm questioning. I gave him a second round grade. That's how I feel. I do think the NFL is probably going to look at size and encompass everything. He's probably going to be more of a third to fourth round player. And then at the Senior Bowl, I thought he was decent. I didn't think that there were a lot of flash moments, but I don't think you could say that about a lot of the safeties, right? It's just a very tough situation for them, especially those guys that, rely on instincts and things like that. So
Right.
I really like this guy a lot. And he tested fast enough to me that, you have the foot speed. He has the instinct. So definitely a stock up guy for me, as far as I gave him a second round grade. I feel really good about the player that he is and how fluid he is.
No, I gave him a second round grade. I did this report over the Draft Network, and I gave him a second as well, Keith. Like, he's a really good football player. But like you say, I feel the same way you do. The NFL is going to look at his frame and be like, okay, now what I'm going to tell you what I was worried about. I was like, please to God, don't come in and be like Chris Smith, his teammate from a year before.
Yeah, so that's what
I was
that's
worried
what I thought
about
too.
that.
And that's why I had to go check the 40 time, because I liked Chris Smith a whole lot.
Me too.
I thought he was just a savvy football player, but I think he was probably like an inch and a half bigger, and another 10 to 15 pounds bigger than Chris Smith. Plus he ran a 40. His 40 was fast. I believe Chris Smith's 40, I think he ran like a 4.65, 4.67, or something like that. Yeah, it was not fast. So I think he'll elevate himself just because of what he did. But this also a guy, DP, that'll strike you. Like, he'll run the alley, and he'll bring the lumber. Right now, it's not a lot of lumber because he's sub 200 pounds, but he's a willing tackler on the edges and on the perimeter. So I think he's just a fun football player that you think about the teams, and I think the Buffalo Bills, like, they lost a safety, right? Just those teams that need another safety hybrid piece that could potentially play free safety, strong nickel, play some man, mix and match some different things. He's one of those type of candidates that you feel comfortable with.
You have to be able to wear multiple hats at safety nowadays. It's not just one design, just alignment nowadays. The NFL loves guys like this, the Chauncey Gardner-Johnsons, the Brian Branches of the world, like Kyle Hamilton. And I said this, Kyle Hamilton, to me, is going to, if he hasn't already, he's going to become the new prototype. The days of Ed Reed are gone. Nobody's looking for that free. Yeah, Kalen Bullock might be the only guy in this class that could play that kind of free safety, just one-on-one, just by himself, because he has that type of, he has 4.4 speed, right? That range. But it's like, that's great to have the makeup speed and the range to catch up to plays, but what can you do before the play gets behind you? And a lot of these other guys are just better like that, right? But the Kyle Hamiltons of the world, the Brian Branches, teams are going to be looking for those type of guys, because it's like, man, if I can put you on the field, you're a good tackler, you're good in run defense and run support, you can blitz. I can do multiple things with you. I can get creative. But Keith, one more guy for me, and that's, he wasn't able to test because he got hurt low-key again. But just watching this tape, and then I liked him when he was at Michigan, Eric All, the tight end from Iowa, man, 6'4", 250, 33-inch arms, 10 and 1/8 on the hand. He's athletic on tape, Keith. Like, he plays with good explosiveness. He can get vertical. He's got good hands. He's a solid route runner. He's effective blocker. It's the injuries that's going to knock him down, because he wasn't able to test, because he got back-to-back years with season-ending injuries. I think he's coming off an ACL this time. or a leg injury and everything. But I think just off the tape and what I've seen from him, this is a guy. Honestly, Keith, back end of the third, early fourth, long as the medicals check out, I'm taking him. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that I've taken him and I'm gonna put him as my tight end one right out the gate, right? But I'm gonna tell you what people should fear. Letting him slide to the fourth round, where I think the San Francisco 49ers got 3 4th-round picks, and then he's the next tight end behind George Kittle, right? Because now you can come out in 12 personnel, 2 good run blockers, 2 good athletes, 2 run after the catch guys, at the tight end position, and Kyle Shanahan will do everything in his power to scheme this young man up and get him in favorable matchups. If he was healthy, I truly believe he'd be tight end too. Like if he was healthy, I believe he would be tight end too.
I was going to say that, and I think entrenched as tight end too, right? I think because if you watch purely the film, it's probably obviously Brock Bowers is by himself, and then I think Jatavian Sanders probably has the most consistent production, and you see athleticism on film. But I think Eric All may be. He will probably bump tight end too because he's the most well-rounded guy, right? As far as the athleticism, blocking, movement skills, run after catchability, things like that. But DP, what goes up must come down, man. So what's coming up next is the stock down segment. We're going to pick a couple prospects, man, that we feel like their draft stock is falling just a little bit. Like I said, whether that's due to, watching the film or just, scheme fits, or do these things translate to the NFL? So coming up next, man, is our stock down segment.
We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. Lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game. Pull off some bank heists and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most richest and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do, like play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go. Now free on the App Store or Google Play. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Keith, what you said, what goes up must come down. When you're looking at everything that's going on, we're hearing things, we're watching film. Whose stock is slipping just a little bit for you right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm gonna go off of film, right? And this is a guy I just wrapped up, and I think just based on the class, I think it's be very interesting to see where he gets drafted. And that's Miami's interior offensive lineman, Javion Coyne. Big body guy. I think it appears that he put on weight from last year to this year. And I just thought that there was some balance issues at times, right? Just him, being a lunger. I do think he is athletic, but it's really more so about him playing under control. And then I also thought about this, is that how many of these guys that we talk about, the Troy Fontanus, the Graham Bartons of the world, right? And other prospects that we always talk about kicking inside to guard, even the Brandon Coleman, right? The offensive tackle from TCU. Everybody's saying he should be a really good guard. So I'm worried that he's going to be a guy whose stock is probably going to fall, and he's going to fall down the draft boards, fall down the draft ladder, right? And while he might have a third-ish, fourth-ish round grade, he may end up as a early fifth round type of football player, because of, I think that there's so many tackles that are probably better movers, but people will feel really comfortable with kicking him down to guard, and then it will move him down the draft board also.
That's interesting. That's interesting because, especially on the interior offensive line class, you want to look for guys who are strong, are physical if you're a gap scheme type of team. But foot quickness, weight, a lot of different things to play into part. And I think this is a solid interior offensive line group where some bigger names and even more athletic profiles that probably, like you said, could bump Cohen down the board. Keith, I'm going to go to Oregon, man, and a receiver that I like. Don't get me wrong. I like him, But I definitely think his stock is trending downward, and that's Troy Franklin out of Oregon. Keith, a guy that went to the combine, ran 4.41 in the 40. He dropped weight, also to run. That's what we were actually shocked that he ran 4.4. He came in 6'2", wasn't 6'3" like listed on Oregon's website. He came in around 6'1", right around the cusp of 6'2", 176. He ran a 4.41. He had a 1.61 10-yard split. Even though he ran a 4.41, the get off in that 10 yards was a little bit concerning, but he showed explosiveness with his jumps and, a 39-inch vert, a 10.4 broad. But it was always this. I went back and watched him again. It was always the things that I consistently had issues with when it pertained to Troy, and it was play strength. And then there was a piece that came out from Ty Dunn. Shout out to my guy Ty Dunn. Him and I think it's Bob McGuinn. Did a piece that he I think does every year, and it's talking to scouts, and they put in an article on the Substack, and this was a quote from there. They talked a scout said about Troy Franklin, he's a huge risk. One scout said his combination of lack of play strength, lack of ability to play through contact, doesn't track the ball well, doesn't frame the ball well at all. That's just not a good combination of weaknesses, even though he's electric fast and will get drafted higher than he probably should. The history tells us that he's going to struggle. And one of the things I kept saying on tape is when I watched him against, he didn't play a ton of high end corners. Now he was testing in practice because Kyrie Jackson is a good corner in this class, a big, tall, long arm, young man over at Oregon. But the best corner he faced was Jabbar Muhammad. And it wasn't, hey, I'm running by Jabbar. It wasn't, I'm going to outfit. Jabbar was calm, cool, collected. He stayed square. And when he got his hands on, he disrupted everything that Troy Franklin tried to do. I always go back to that Pac-12 game, Keith. You put your number one wide receiver on their number one corner, and you target him one time. And that was a pass breakup by Jamar. They never targeted Jamar again. You know what I mean? So it's like watching Troy playing through contact, playing in traffic, playing at the catch point. He's got drop issues as well. I mean, I think I comped them early in the draft cycle, I think, or during the season to more advanced Jalen Hyatt because he has legitimate speed, but he's a better route runner, has a better release package than Jalen had, right? But the drop issues and the play strength issues remind me a lot of Ted Ginn and remind me a lot of MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And I'm not taking that in round one. I'm sorry. I can't take that guy in round one.
How do you feel about round two?
Round two, I'm fine with. I think more towards the back end of middle to back end of round two. He's not a top 40 pick to me. He's a top 60 for sure. Top 55. He's in that realm. He's got to be to me towards the back end of the first. I think he's a situation you bring him in. He takes the top off the defense. You got a number one wide receiver. Great. But I think if you're drafting him to be your number one wide receiver, it's going to be a wake-up call for you early on.
Yep. He's a polarizing prospect, and I think he's a guy that Steam has. It's kind of dwindled a little bit, right? I think we were talking about, it went from top 15 pick to, like you say, people, talking top 50-ish, maybe somewhere around there. But we'll see, right? Just because he's a long wide receiver that can run. And we know one thing, DP, that the NFL, they throw more curveballs than necessary, right? Like these guys necessarily, they get it wrong more than the prospects get it wrong themselves, right? By overdrafting or putting people or putting the players in certain positions. But DP, that wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we are your number one source for everything NFL draft content. I want to say shout out to everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. If you haven't hit that like button, go hit that like button. If you haven't commented, drop a comment. Let us know how you feel about today's podcast, and make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel with the hottest NFL draft content. Hit the notification, hit the bell. And I want to say we definitely appreciate you over here, man. We are 1 week away from the NFL draft, so make sure to stay tapped in with us. We will be in Detroit for the draft. Yes, we will still be boots on the ground. We're going to have a lot of fun conversations coming this week. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my co-host, Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL.
Listen, go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everyday. As the next episode, Mock Draft Monday, we're going through Peter Schrager's 2024 mock draft, where he had some little twists and turns that we're going to break down heading into draft week. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.